Welcome back to the Word for the Valley podcast, and this is part 2 of our episode. Now, in this episode, the conversation about marriage and divorce continues, but now Jesus brings the issue deeper than legal permission and into the condition of the human heart. See, the Pharisees assume that because Moses allowed divorce, God must have commanded it. But Jesus makes an important distinction. Permission is not the same as God's design. Divorce was never God's ideal. It was a provision made because the hardness of human hearts. In this episode, Pastor Mike continues through Matthew 19, helping us understand the difference between what God permits and what He originally intended. Let's get back into it with Pastor Mike, picking back up at verse 6.
So then in verse 6, they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, look, what God has joined together, let not man separate. If a man and a woman go through this procedure, they come to this conclusion, God sees them now as one. Be very careful in talking about yourselves as him and her or mine and hers. We are now us. We are now we. If she does something wrong, it's kind of on me, right? I'm not taking the responsibility for all her mistakes, but I am with her in that process. If I do something well, she gets some of the credit. Okay? It is a we thing. One of the dangers, and Ramsey goes through this, one of the dangers when you get married of keeping your bank accounts separate, right? And the danger is that you maintain a him and a hers mindset about the relationship. It's not his money and her money. It's we's money. It's our money, right? And we just need to talk about how to figure out how to share our money now, you know? Julie will oftentimes do that to me. And even still now, right? Because she doesn't work a paying job and these kinds of things. It doesn't mean she doesn't work, by the way. She just doesn't work a paying job. And she said, well, you know, I went out and I spent your money on groceries. I said, honey, it's been we for a long time, right? I spent your money, right? So then I thank her back. I thank her for letting me eat her groceries, you know, kind of thing. So, it's ours now. We're one, and we were one on the day when we said that we would be, and we've become more one ever since, right? As a result of it, therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. Meaning, God won't do the separating. God does the joining. God will not do the separating. God's telling me to get a divorce. Probably not. Probably not. He probably won't tell you to get a divorce. He may permit you to get a divorce. We'll get that in just a second. God's telling me. Sometimes people come up with the craziest stuff. I was praying about this, and God told me, like, you do realize that's illegal, right? God told me to use my tax money like this. Don't do it. Don't do it, because now I know I might have to turn you in. The IRS will come. I don't want to be involved with the IRS. Like, just do the thing that is kind of the right thing. God will not endorse this in that positive way. What God has joined together, let not man separate. Verse 7 then says, they said to him, why then did Moses command, look at this, why then did Moses command a certificate of divorce and to put her away? This is presumptive close. This is a car salesman who is making the sell before you even have test driven the car, right? But Moses commanded. Moses didn't command it. Moses wrote it in as a provision, as a permission. That's not a command, right? If she doesn't please you, divorce her. God says so, right? There'd be no marriages left, you know, kind of in the world if that was the case. God doesn't command a certificate of divorce. Jesus reinterprets it in verse 8. He said to them, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. Never confuse direction with permission. Never confuse direction with permission. God in our lives has a permissive will. He will allow us to make decisions that He would rather us not make. Well, that sounds kind of weird. Isn't God sovereign? Yes. But He does allow enough room in free will for us to make choices, right? As any of us who have children do. Anybody who raises kids is fully aware of the difference between desire and permission, right? My kids say, hey, Dad, can I do that? I'm like, oh, okay. I'll let you do it this one time, and then we're going to see how it goes. And if they would come to me, Dad, do you want me to do that? I would say, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Why? Well, why not? Well, I think it's dumb. I think it's dangerous, right? You're going to put my car at risk and your health at risk and other people. I don't see a whole lot of benefit to it. I don't really want you to do it. Well, can I anyway? Yeah. You can. But you do realize what that does to the relationship, right? If you're willing to do that to the relationship, then go ahead and do it. But if you want to walk in desire, then you won't ask questions regarding permission, right? Can Christians dance? Joe Foch's answer is always, some can, some can't. Right? A horizontal expression or a vertical expression of horizontal desire, right? Can Christians go to the movies, right? Well, some movies maybe, some movies not, right? If you're living your life as a Christian on what God permits, you're living along the wrong measuring line. Learn to live where God desires, where it pleases Him. And then what you'll find, when people start to move into like seeking God's will and really wanting just to please God, then the next thing I get from them oftentimes is, well, he doesn't like, I don't hear God's voice a lot. He's not cracking down on me. He's not being as strong in my life as he used to be. He doesn't have to be. If your only desire is to please God, He's not going to have to say, go left and don't go right. Do this and don't do that. He's not going to have to say that. You're going to be within His will and you'll bobble around in that a little bit, but you'll be right where it pleases Him. And He won't have to worry about making sure that you stay on the road and don't hit some pothole or detour. Right? And listen, this is one of the main things I've learned as being a parent. It is so much more fun parenting kids who seek to please their father than versus parenting kids who will only do what their parents permit them to do. Parenting children who look for the line and live just as close to the line as possible to stay within the good favor of the parents is frustrating. Frustrating. It doesn't engender meaningful fellowship and relationship. It always requires supervision, right? I feel like you're always hawking over me. It's because I believe I have to. It is probably the last thing I really want to do, right? Again, I want to go home, put my feet up on the recliner, and fall asleep to the Phillies. That's what I want to do, right? If I have to micromanage your life, that's not a statement on me. That's a statement on you and how you're functioning and how I believe that you're functioning in this relationship. I have to. Well, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you to divorce your wives. But from the beginning it was not so. So I say to you now, and he has said this before, Matthew chapter 5, whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality. This does seem to be the exception, right? The two things that absolve the marriage union, death and the immorality. It's the porneia, by the way. Sexual immorality is not just adultery. It was defined very narrowly amongst the Jews and giving them permission to do a lot of other ungodly things. Anything sexually that breaks that union, that trust between a husband and wife, is the only thing apart from death that God sees as a justifiable reason for divorce. And particularly divorce and then remarriage. Okay? Listen, I didn't write it. You work it out on your own. I didn't write it. These are hard instructions. Joe DeFazio years ago, reckoning through with these things, and he and I didn't agree on all of the interpretations of the words. But he came to the conclusion that he was going to live the remainder of his life out single because he had tried this, the instructions of God, and he had messed them up. And he had left multiple wives behind him with hurt and pain that were his fault. And so therefore he demanded amongst himself to not live his last days doing that again, and instead gave himself to public service and left a legacy of a true work of God, right? This is one of those things that may be a deal breaker Whoever divorces his wife except for sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. All right? So these are questions that need to be asked, conversations that need to be had as per the reason for the divorce and where that marriage stands. If it has any chance of being reconciled, it should be. If it does not because of sexual immorality and the two parties have moved along, then possibly a remarriage, a second marriage, can be potentially possible in that situation. Okay? Verse 9, verse 10 then says, his disciples said to him, if such is the case, this has got to be Peter, isn't it? I just love this, by the way. I'm so grateful for a little bit of humor in the middle of this conversation, right? His disciples said to him, they don't find it funny, by the way, if such is the case of the man with his wife, it's better not to marry. If marriage was that serious, then none of us will ever get married because none of us could ever do this and there's no way that we just quit. Right? And therefore then the church will never have any kids, kind of thing, because nobody's ever going to get married and how's this going to move on? The standard here, right, if this Peter or one of the other disciples, the standard here of Christ is so high that none of the men can feel like they can do it, which is exactly where the standard of marriage should be. Because again, marriage is impossible. Do you know how hard your relationship with God is? Like how to maintain closeness with God and being on fire for the Lord and walking in our first love and like how hard is that? That's hard. Why is this a struggle? And I'm struggling with this and I'm not close here and I'm messing these kinds of things up. And listen, in your relationship with God, one of you is perfect. And by the way, it ain't you. Just so you know, right? In your relationship with God, one of you is not perfect. So therefore, if there's a problem in the relationship with God and you are not doing what you are being instructed to do, it's your fault. Right? Oh, it's God's fault. He said it wrong. He didn't say it the way I can understand it. He doesn't understand my life. He doesn't understand modern life, 2022 kind of thing. Now he needs to come up with the times. No, God understands. The problem is for you. Here's the challenge within a marriage. Two people in a relationship, and none of them is perfect. So all of them are going to keep making mistakes. And now my mistakes compound into her mistakes, and then her future mistakes compound into my future mistakes, and then the whole thing continues to go in these kinds of ways to the place where it feels in some ways where it's irreconcilable, where it's impossible. As the Lord will say later, with men, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Right? God can make a marriage good. He's the one who designed it, and He's the one who intends that it become a picture of Christ and the church. All right? If you're not happy with your marriage, review how He loves her and how she submits to Him. Review Ephesians chapter 5. And just go over it with a fine-tooth comb. And the Lord will begin to put things back in order. The marriage will improve. That doesn't mean that any of you are going to be all that happy about how it improves for a while. You do realize that, right? This is one of the dangers within a marriage. This marriage is for me. It needs to make me happy. No, it doesn't. This marriage just may be the opportunity for you to die. To yourself, to lay down your life for the benefit of somebody else, which is actually the definition of love. You may never be happy ever again. In the Lord. Back in 2013, when Julie got sick, I determined that if she was going to live the rest of her life in a nursing home or on a hospital bed, that I would be faithful to her all the way to the end. If I had to be her caregiver for the remainder of my life versus being her husband, I would be willing to do it. And in some ways, it's an honor. Right? I always tell her, I took care of you when you couldn't take care of yourself. Someday before long, you're going to have to do the same thing for me because I'm not going to remember my own name. So, and that, just remember, I paid it forward. You owe me kind of thing. Like, just, and she said, I would do it. I signed up for it. I would do it. Right? You can't beat that loyalty in any relationship. Some of us in this room, 50 years marriage, 60 years marriage, like, well, you end up building into that relationship over those many years, and the faithfulness and loyalty will never be replaced by downsizing and finding a younger model, men. Your midlife crisis is your problem. Get over it. Right? She is not the solution to your ills. You feel old. You are. Look in the mirror. Right? Rich Mullins says getting old is a reminder that we're not here on earth forever. That's a good thing. We got a home. We're looking forward. You're not supposed to be satisfied here. You're supposed to be a stranger and a pilgrim here. If she's not meeting all your needs, it may be because she can't. And you're putting a pressure on her that no human being can deal with. She's not there to meet all your needs. Jesus is there to meet all your needs. Right? Same thing for the wife. He's not your servant. He's not your slave. He's not there to take care of you. That's what God's for. He will love you. He will protect you. He will honor you. Right? Your husband will do his best, but he's an nincompoop. We all understand that. Right? Every man I've married is a man. Not that I married them. You understand what I mean? Got to edit that out here. In every wedding I've done, have a man and a woman in front of you. I look like, honey, do you really understand what you're doing? This guy's a dork. Look at him. He's got this big goofy smile. He goes, oh, I love my wife. You have no idea what you're doing. No idea what you're signed up for. Right? Rich Mullins also said that his dad told him one time, if anybody understood what marriage was, nobody would ever get married. One of the beauties of it is being somewhat ignorant and then growing into it as you go. It is possible. I don't want to get into celibacy. I do, actually. I don't want verses 11 and 12. Let's just do it. He said to them then in verse 11, all cannot accept this saying, but only those to whom it has been given. For there are eunuchs who were born thus from their mother's womb, and there are eunuchs who are made eunuchs by men, and there are eunuchs who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He who is able to accept it, let him accept it. Meaning, if you can live without needing to be married, you don't have the sexual desire to be married, you're not attracted to the opposite sex. There are people. We do realize this, right? There are people who are not attracted sexually to the opposite sex. Then don't be married. It's okay. God probably made that individual celibate, to be single, to be a eunuch. That's fine, right? Paul actually says in 1 Corinthians 7, I'd prefer it to be that way. I prefer that you'd live single. I prefer that you wouldn't be married. You can devote more time to the service of the Lord, less concerns for a spouse. I'm going to read it just because I want Paul to say it and not me. He says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, now concerning virgins, unmarried individuals, I have no commandment from the Lord. Yet I give judgment as one from the Lord in his mercy that he has made trustworthy. I suppose, therefore, that this is good because of the present distress, that it is good for a man to remain as he is. He says that if you're bound to a wife, don't seek to be loosed. If you're married, don't, well, I'm saved now, I'm going to go get a divorce. Don't do that. Just be married as a Christian. Just be married. Don't seek to be loosed. He says, are you loosed from a wife? You're not married? Look, do not seek a wife. One of the most highly transgressed commandments in all of the modern church age, right? We have enterprises that are made to help people seek spouses, right? Christian mingle, right? Don't seek a wife. If people actually obeyed that verse, Christian mingle would go out of business. Paul then says in verse 31 that in regards to marriage, we are to be as those who use the world as not misusing it, for the form of this world is passing away. And then in verse 35, he says, I'm instructing you this, so that you will learn to serve the Lord without distraction. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, Paul encourages, if you can be single, be single. And use your singleness, use your time, use your energy, use the extra money. Use that to further serve the Lord, if you can. Now, if God comes along, you're doing your thing, you're living your life, you're seeking the Lord, you're walking in the thing, and God brings somebody along, and it seems like they fit in regards to your calling, then the goal at the end of the marriage is that the two of you will actually do more for the kingdom of God and not less. What we see in and around the church is it begins to divide here between the husband and wife, and then they stop coming Wednesdays, and then they stop coming Sundays, and then they stop serving, then they don't hang out with church friends anymore because there's too much tension, and then they start pulling away, and then they get a divorce, and even long before that happens, they've abandoned their service to God. A marriage relationship in the church is to stir one another on to love and good deeds. My wife checks me every single day. What did you read? What are you hearing? What are you getting? Every single day, right? She's usually in the bedroom doing her quiet time on the, I don't know how she does it. I don't know how you sit on the bed and read. I would like die. My neck would hurt. My back would hurt. She sits there and she reads. I'm out in the living room, go in to get my shower, into the room, grab my gear. Hey, what did you read this morning? And you know, there's some mornings, I don't want to tell her what I read because it's convicting. God just busted my chops. I don't want to tell you now. You're going to hold me accountable to it. Right? But she wants to know. And I can come right back. Honey, what did you write down? What's in your journal today? What did you get? Right? And she can tell me things, right? Because we are one and because we're trying to walk in this direction together, she can tell me things that nobody else in the world will ever even understand. And I appreciate her so much. I told the guys this morning, if Julia died in 2013, I don't know that I would be here today. I don't know that I could do this work without having that level of accountability and encouragement. She can both at the same time say, Michael, you stink, and that was good. She can say both at the same time, and I know exactly what she means and why she said it. Right? I don't always like it, but she's encouraging me. Do you want me to do less? No, don't do less. Do more. Well, that means less time at home. That means less money here. That means less. This is why we're together. We're not going to be here that long anyway. This is why we're here. This is why we're together. This is what our marriage is all about. Let's go. Let's get after it. Let's go. Let's do more. Right? Oh, you need to take care of me. She doesn't do that. She doesn't do it. She doesn't make the marriage about Julie. You don't try to make the marriage about Michael. Right? The marriage is about Jesus. And remarkably, when the two are there working together, man, it is a powerful force for the kingdom of God. Right? Whatever it takes, for those of you who are married, whatever it takes to get on the same page in regards to your calling, and vision, and destiny, in regards to your service of God, whatever it takes to get on the same page, do it. It's going to be less money, less time, less fun, less vacations. You do realize there are people around the world who never get a vacation. Never ever one vacation. They don't ever go anywhere to just sit back and put their feet up for a week or two at a time. You do realize that, right? You have one, use it for the kingdom of God. Okay? But it isn't, you don't earn it. It isn't a right. Right? And if we realize these things, they're really not about us. They're about ultimately what God wants to demonstrate and do through us. If you see it that way, it'll become the best thing you'll ever have.
We learn that when two imperfect people come together, mistakes are going to happen, wounds will compound, and at times, things can feel impossible to move forward. But what feels impossible with men is never impossible with God. You see, God designed marriage, and He intends it to reflect something greater than just personal happiness. It's meant to be a picture of Christ and the church. And often, love in marriage looks less like getting what we want and more like learning how to lay down our lives for the good of someone else. All right, that's all for now. Thanks for listening to the Word for the Valley podcast. So long, everyone.